Cześć, dzień dobry are only the 2 out of 5 words I learned from 5 years living in Poland. I live in Gdynia, I lived in Gdańsk and in Sopot. Basically, I circled this area of Poland and I'm like, nah, I'm not living anywhere else. But the weather is the same. People are like, the north is so nice with the sea and everything. It's the sea, but also cold and gray. But I still love Poland. I don't know if I like opening conferences, to be honest. I like when other speakers give everyone the energy and get them pumped for the day, and then I come last, and I just ruin your day with my talk, and you go at home, you're like, why did that motherfucker have to talk about all these things? But opening is nice because you will probably forget about my talk by the end of the day. So it's weird to me because I've been at conferences where, like for example, Steve Wozniak has spoken at the same conference, or the creator of CSS, the creator. So the MC usually would be like, and now the guy who created Apple, and now the guy who invented JavaScript, and now the guy who invited, what is Electron? Like, oh, whatever, let him speak. Well, let's speak anyone nowadays. So without further ado, that's me. You can scan. It's been so long since this presentation. That QR code might lead you to a malicious website that gives you a virus. I think it leads to my blog if you want to scan it. It's kitze.io. So I'm from Macedonia. I live in Poland. I don't like any of these titles. So on the speakers page, you might have seen just a rectangle mover. Because at the end of the day, I want more people to deal with the fact we get some JSON and then we paint a bunch of rectangles. It's not that deep, but people put like senior architect of dreams on their LinkedIn. You're just moving rectangles at the end of the day. Me, I'm working on too many things at once. As Yanni said, like you cannot escape me. I'll find a way. I'll be at your house, like knocking. I want to talk about JavaScript. So I have a blog, vlog, all of these apps. I'll just skip through all of this. Like I even started making diss tracks about web development. So I got to a low point of my life. I'm like, fuck web development. I'm going to diss it in a rap song. And I even have a couple new things that I haven't mentioned here. I have a course now, I have a podcast, and I have a baby, which is like the biggest project of my life. Let's call it that. Woo! A round of applause for my baby, which she didn't give me enough sleep last night because she's here with us traveling for the first time. One of my main things, like what I want to do at the beginning of a conference is like mention what I'm working on. So this is Sizzy, the browser for developers, and then just torture myself by asking who is using this. Even the guy who's working on it is like half raising his hand, like, yeah, I used it, but now, with Arc doing this and that, whatever. So it's a browser for developers. We're going to talk about it more, and my course is called Zero to Ship. That mascot was made by Midjourney. That's why it has 2 mouths. Don't laugh at it. In a way, it's marketing. People are like, oh, this mascot is so bad, but they bring me clicks, whatever. So I felt guilty that I'm probably going to be the only one here not doing a technical talk. So I prepared like 5 quick tech talks before we start. So I'm just going to move out the stage and come back for these 5 quick tech talks. So first one is, just go back and go back. How to build an Electron browser from scratch using Electron, Next.js, and MobX State Tree. Don't, your mental health will thank you. That's the first one. Thank you for attending my talk. Next one. Hi, my talk is the missing explanation for use effect. It's still missing. Thank you for attending. Next one. Moving out. Moving back. What's new and exciting in React? Nothing unless you're the Facebook team. Like, deal with it. And I think this is the last one, so I'm just going to do a quick move. Practical use cases for Web3. All right. So my talk is called GitHub Stars Pay Your Rent. And it's very hard giving a talk when you slept only for a few hours. I feel jittery. I feel like I haven't talked enough in the morning, except like, good morning, wife. Good morning, baby. You don't talk. And now I have to give this talk, so it's weird. So I've written an article back in the day. Maybe some of you remember this article. It was a very long article, like probably, I don't know, an hour read. But it's going like on Hacker News almost every year. So when I see a spike on my blog for like 2 visitors to like thousands, I'm like, oh, they're going to comment again on it. But when I read it, like back then, 2019 was a more hopeful Kitze, hopeful about startups, building the future, this and that. This talk is not going to be like that. So basically, I have 2 goals for this talk. To motivate you to start properly charging for your work, whether you have something in open source or an idea or an app or whatever, and that's the first half of the talk. You're going to forget about this slide. Trust me, I'm going to get you hyped to the point you forget there's part 2. So part 2 is discourage you from ever building your own startup, from ever releasing something paid because it's a nightmare. So let's start. Everything I ever worked on was for one single reason. Money. That would be so lame if I actually said that. So the reason is I just wanted to build solutions to my own problems. That's it. It's that simple. When you tell this to people, they're like, yeah, it sounds like that, but it's more complex. It's not more complex than that. Like the first product, while I had a job that I released as a side project, was this thing. I cannot pronounce it because like 5 people who use Android here, they're going to get their assistants triggered. So I was using Android. I had a bunch of Google Homes, and I was constantly Googling like, which commands can I use to this freaking thing to ask it questions? Like it wasn't not as smart as ChatGPT. You had to be precise. And I started building this, and I was working in like a co-working space, and people constantly were asking me, what are you working on? And I would tell them, hey, I'm working on this. And I'd be like, why? Like everyone was like, who needs this? What are you doing with this? You're just wasting your time. You cannot monetize. You cannot do, like only some grandma is gonna know how to set a timer for her spaghetti or whatever. I still get emails from people, hey, my Google Home doesn't work. And I'm like, I'm not the guy you're mad at. Like I just made the list of things you can ask it. So it seems silly. Like when you write the bullet points for this, it's like super niche. You cannot monetize this. The only benefit is the grandma with the timer for spaghetti. But I didn't expect this. I wasn't going for this. It got me featured on TechCrunch. Like I totally didn't expect that. Suddenly, like blow up in followers, people following me like, oh, this guy's building things. And I spent a lot of time on that like intro animation. When you open the website, there's like nice intro animation. People were asking me, why are you doing that? Because I knew people will share it because of that animation. So I didn't have any agenda or a plan. I just wanted a silly solution for myself. And I kind of turned it, let's just add a nice animation, maybe make it useful. And then snowballed into like another effect that I wasn't basically planning. So it wasn't a part of grandmaster plan. So I get a bunch of DMs about these things, like how do you grow your following, how do you launch a product, how you this, how do you do that. And I always start like with the advice, just go with a problem and then you release a solution and then you tweet about it, or you post about it, or you blog about it or whatever. And most people have it the opposite. Like I see people hashtag build in public, which are not building. Like there's so many people go on Twitter, hashtag build in public. Like motherfucker, you're only doing the in public part. Like you forgot about the build part. You forgot to actually build, and then you need to build in public. So people are over obsessed. Like nowadays I see they have these tools for measuring until 26th of February, I want to get to that amount of followers. Like it's going to drain you more. Just build cool shit and constantly post about them. And then if it's good, you're going to get followers. If not, it's not going to happen. But people have it twisted and they spend way too much energy on like, oh, I want to find the best ways to make money, the best ways to get followers. Instead, just work on problem solutions, and eventually the rest of it will come. So there are two problems with this approach, with the advice that I'm giving you, that you don't think that your problems are worth solving. Like I also have that, even after solving so many problems, when I make something new, I'm like, who's gonna care for this? Like who will actually like this? And then second problem is you don't see things as problems. Like you don't see something and be like, oh, this needs a fix. So let's start with the first one, but nobody else has my problem. This is a very dumb opinion to have, because probably you're thinking about your closest bubble of, just people around you. And you like, think about few faces that don't have that problem, but you're not thinking about everybody. So regarding seeking for problems, we have two types of people. Like this is my sister when we lived together, like back with our family in Macedonia. Like she annoyed the shit out of me because we had like a remote for the TV, remote for the DVD, and one of the remotes died, like the batteries died. And for a year, instead of fixing the thing, you know what she was doing? She was swapping the batteries. Anytime she needed to switch to the, and this was multiple times per day. That's the reason why I moved out. My parents were like, he was so ambitious, he moved big. No, I moved out because I couldn't see her not solving this freaking problem. And then you have me, Mr. finds a problem in everything. Like I see this mic stand, I'm like, yeah, this could have been, Like it's also an obsessive way to think, but it's nice when it comes to startups and products and open source and a bunch of these other things. For example, I wanted to cook, I wanted to start cooking, I started slicing cherry tomatoes. These motherfuckers like splat in your face. Like you cannot cut it in half, right? You ever eat a salad and just splats in your face? So I was like, I'm doing this once and I have to find a solution. And I am very happy for my wife and daughter and I love them, but I love this thing more than that. Like you load this puppy up with cherry tomatoes, you do zip, like it's on some website from China, I don't even know. It's my most used item ever. So the problem with this thinking is like everything that you do, like you're chopping something, you're doing something, you're like, oh, this is a problem, let me solve it. Now we end up with 50 million kitchen utensils because of me. One of my personal problems, this was 2000, I don't know, because after COVID, everything is 1 year, right? So the 2000 and something. Was resizing my browser. So I was still freelancing and my client was like, we were working on some design and they were like, you gotta make sure that this works on all devices. And I was like, cool. And for a while, I would just switch to iPad, laptop, iPhone, iPad. Like I would do that thing in Google Chrome until I was like, wait a minute, can't we just make a thing where I see multiple things at once? So I literally did that in a day. So I went, index HTML file, I dump a bunch of iframes, I loaded a URL, and I tweeted, hey, would anyone like to see a tool like this for like working on responsive design? A couple of people said yes, a couple of people will be like, who needs that? But this is literally how Sizzy started. Just me tweeting a bunch of iframes, it was shitty, it was not working properly, it was a Chrome extension, but it started something, and then it started growing and growing and growing and growing. A lot of people wouldn't have even, but like, who will use this? Why would I open source this? Why would I even publish this? Then, like most of the features that we built throughout the years, the last 4 years of Sizzy, were just me being tired of something. So I was like, you know, when you're testing multiple user roles, for example, you have like the admin role and the normal and the guest role and incognito and whatever. So I was like, how about for every device or for every tab that we have, you can choose a session. And now when you're testing your website, you're basically looking at 3 sessions at once. So all of this, like I have a bunch of things, like I don't wanna, like that's not my goal here. Like I was tired of course, get it? So now there's a toggle to disable or enable course if you don't wanna deal with those requests. Or like killing a port. Like I hated going to the terminal, doing some nerdy shit, like we're in a matrix or something. And we just build UI, you type in the port and you kill it. This was pre-React, so now it's not that useful. So I call this like I'm tired of driven development, and it kind of works because the customers actually don't know what they need. Like if I ask someone before making a browser for developers, hey, what would you like to see in a browser for developers? They'll be like, well, I don't know. So I think there was a story about who needed an ATM, basically. No one needed an ATM. It just happened, someone invented it. Probably a bunch of haters on Hacker News or whatever. They were like, oh, fuck this, I can just go to the bank. Hacker News didn't exist back then, but whatever. And you just have to basically build your own ideas and hoping that customers are going to like it. And for Sizzy, it was like, a lot of the features are like that. Like, I'm just tired of something. We build it as a feature and customers are like, oh, that's cool. I never thought of that. So then we had the classical Shakespearean dilemma to open source or not to open source. Because it was still a Chrome extension. It was not a proper browser. And I was like, you know, all the cool kids are getting their GitHub stars. So fuck it, let's just open source Sizzy. And we open source because it's easier. So I still see this pattern. So I want to build something cool. And then you have like 2 milestones you can go with. Like one would be open sourcing this. It's right now, right? You go to GitHub, you're like, I'm so close to getting likes on Twitter. I want to do it now. So you go and you open source it and you write a nice README, you put all the emojis, you tweet it, you get 30 likes and 50 stars and that's it. The harder part would be like to go the extra mile to work for like weeks or months to turn this into something more. But that scares so many people, like making paid products and whatever is super scary. So they're like, you know, I'll just open source this and I'll be happy with my stars and whatever. So that's what I decided back then. Open source Sizzy. In the, I don't know, first year, I think, of being open source, we got like 5,000 stars, 2,000 upvotes on Product Hunt. It won all of the awards, all of the thingies. They had like a summer thing for like the best products of the summer. And we beat Raspberry Pi. So there was like Raspberry Pi 4 below us, and then Sizzy. Isn't that like bananas? Raspberries? Bananas? Okay. Silence. So we got thousands of active users. So I give you all of these metrics, right? So you might think, so naturally that means, you know, with all of this and thousands of people using the Chrome extension, you were loaded. So I'll let you do a little drum roll just on your knees and I'll tell you how much Sizzy made as an open source product for 2 years of being open source. Little drum roll. Saddest drum roll ever. $92. All of the effort, closing PRs, dealing with issues, doing all sorts of things to help all of these people. At the end of the day, it made $92 and we had rent to pay. And you might be like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Now, with my current way of doing open source, which is basically something like this, like you see all of these warnings, and this is an FAQ for one of my routers. I'll let you read it for a second while I sip this water because I'm thirsty. I don't bother. Like, will it ever have tests? Yeah, if you write them, right? I won't write them. So now it makes sense that I have a single GitHub sponsor. If you go to my GitHub, I think even that guy canceled for, it's $1, guy, don't be that cheap. But I have one GitHub sponsor and now it makes sense. But back then I was really giving my everything. I had so many libraries and at the end of the day didn't make much money. So back then basically didn't make sense. This thing is a lot of open source developers don't want to deal with this fact, but it's an obvious freaking fact. Like if you go to the airport and someone hands you a sandwich, most people are going to be like, oh, free sandwich. They're not going to be like, I'll give you $30 for that. Like people want shit for free. And I can prove that to you if you're like, no, I'm actually paying for my stuff. Oh, are you? Have you ever seen one of these? Have you ever dragged it to the right side? No, because if you drag this to the right side, a bunch of dust is going to be like, because no one touches the right side. Like you drag this motherfucker to the left, like I want to get it to 0, right? You're never, like be honest. If it's $1, you're going to give them $1. You're never going to be like, oh, this book deserves $34. And people are like, oh, Pikachu face, why doesn't someone give me more money? So a couple of years went by, I got into these like conferences, workshops, whatever. I wasn't building websites, so I just left Sizzy to be a Chrome extension and I didn't basically bother with that. But kind of the perfect storm happened. I wanted to work on websites again, and once an idea like the cherry tomato slicer gets in my head, I'm not gonna go back to the knife. So once I knew like, okay, this is a Chrome extension, it's shitty, it has iframes, a bunch of limitations, why don't we make this like a real thing, like a real browser, which won't have all of these limitations? Because if I'm working on websites, I'm not gonna go back to the old way because I've seen a glimpse of like how can be like the new way of doing these things. So I got a DM from this guy who was looking for a job and he was looking to make it in life or whatever. So he was like, I can help you. And today, together we worked on this like Electron paid version of Sizzy. So I went to Amazon, I tried to use pay with GitHub stars, but that button was like disabled, so it was only pay with a card. So I was like, okay, now we have the classic Shakespearean dilemma, like to close source an open source app and make it pay, or not to close an open source app and keep it free. High on Shroom, Shakespeare. Because this is a very tough dilemma, especially when you have people who use the thing and it's free, you're gonna get scorched online. So now we go from nobody else has my problem to the thought of nobody is going to pay for this, which is ridiculous, especially with all the metrics. Because we've seen the metrics, we had analytics, right? We knew that people were using this thing. It depends who do you talk to. Like I talk to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I have the math on a napkin and whatever. And if that many people are using it for free and we only charge $5, and you know, classic mom, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you should just get a job. You know, the classic one. So I was blaming her, but I was also kind of not believing. Even with all of these metrics, I was like, yeah, but who's going to pay for this, like for real? So this is also a wrong way to think. And I realized this because we're thinking about our closest bubble. Like to me, that was like, I'm only on Twitter. I'm not on LinkedIn, on all of these other social networks. And for me, it was when I'm thinking of releasing something, you just visualize a couple of people that you know on the social network. You don't visualize the entire world. So when we launched Sizzy, we started getting like sales from Japan. I was like, I don't know anyone from Japan. Like, this is so fucking weird. And it was an amazing feeling. It just opened my worldview of like, holy fuck, we can sell to so many more people. But we ask our mom or we ask our friend, what do you think of this idea? And we usually don't move on the idea. So choosing a price was actually hard because on one hand, like we're competing against free browsers. When people see a browser for developers and then they see pricing, like our visit time on the landing page is 3.5 seconds, like until they get to paying for a browser, like fuck off. So choosing a price, I wanted something, I was thinking like, I want to do good in the world and I want everyone to be able to afford it. So what we did is like, you make this specialized tool, you spend so much money, like salaries for an employee and all of this shit for services and hosting and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, like freaking idiots, we priced it at $5 per month. Because I thought like, if it's $5, anyone can afford it, right? So when I was talking to investors, they were like, we would talk and they were like, okay, let's look at the landing page, look at the pricing. And they literally, one guy was like, are you fucking kidding me? They're like, have you seen a tool like Photoshop or whatever with so many features? Like users are gonna think you're stealing their data. And I still have to explain to users, you're opening localhost in Sizzy. What the fuck can I steal? Like we have a big JSON file that we store on your disk, which doesn't go anywhere. And even if it does, like it's gonna be you visiting localhost 3000 and localhost 3001 if localhost 3000 is busy. So anyway, this seems like you build something amazing, you price it this low, and customers are skeptical. They're kind of something wrong is happening here. So what I realized with pricing products is there are people who get it and there are people who don't get it. So people who get it, like they'll immediately, now we double the pricing, we tripled even at this point, I don't know. People who get it, like, oh, this will save me a lot of hours, they'll just buy it. People who don't get it, you cannot price it that low. Even when you give it for free, they just don't get it. So you don't need to bother with them, basically. So of course we closed the app and the mob started like, this should be free and what, like these are some of the things that people have said online. I want to pay only once. Fair. Isn't this literally Google Chrome? They're like, I'm going to make my own version. I'm going to add this. The best argument online is like, I can code this in a week, right? So all of these things like desktop apps shouldn't be subscription-based. Why would I pay for a browser? Isn't this literally one Chrome extension? But this doesn't translate to the real world. Like only online and on Hacker News and on Twitter, people can talk like this. Imagine going to a supermarket and be like, I can find this milk on the other side of town for like $2. I can get my own cow and milk it. And the cashier is going to be like, okay, go. Like, go ahead, do that. But online, people take the right to tell you how you should price your things and, you know, how you should do stuff. So we get to the peak of this, the launch. Like, this was fucking epic because we've been working on it for so long. We were ready for Product Hunt and for Twitter. Like, everything exploded. We were celebrating. Like, I remember I had my smart lights turn like green and ka-ching sounds at home and all of these things. It was like, I was refreshing the payments dashboard so much that they literally blocked my IP address. So I had to write an email like, hey guys, can you unblock me? I'll never check it twice per minute, please. So my wife got into it. Like, she joined it actually. She bought all of this merch, which makes us look like Sizzy vomited on us. So she got like way too excited for this. She was like, oh, we're gonna do it, and customer support and this and that. So until now, it sounds like, oh, that's great, you know? I see some people in the audience with their phones probably quitting their job, texting their boss like, fuck you, I'm gonna close source my repo. I'm going to make my own thing. I'm gonna go on Tinder. I'm gonna find a wife. She's gonna make merch. We're gonna live. And I just want to remind you, there's a second half of this talk, all right? So if this is you until now, this is gonna be you from this moment on. So this second part is called fuck having a startup, all right? Reasons why not having, there are many. Like I would have to speak for, I don't know how much time I have left. I have 10 minutes, so probably this should be enough. Let's start with the basics. I tweeted this. Most engineers with a salary make more money than the average startup founder and they still can't wait to have their own startup. So this is true. There's been a lot of times ups and downs where I'm like, oh, there's so many people making more money by just having a salary and an easier job, but you still want to be on this roller coaster. You get tricked by the people you see on Twitter or somewhere. Like there's this random, this is an invented tweet, but a lot of people will like grind it on this for a couple of years and finally got to $500 per month. And I'm like, but McDonald's, it pays more. Like it's $500, but you see all the emoji and you're like, I want to tweet this one day, right? It's like easy to be tricked. And then people reply, the replies are my favorite. It's not about the money, it's about ownership and not wasting hours per week on meetings. Like we had so many meetings. It's not like if you have your own startup, you're not gonna have meetings. You just hate them more because you have to schedule the meeting. So you're the asshole who schedules the meeting. Then it's like, it's because people are motivated and fulfilled work that gives them meaning, not only monetary, yada, yada, yada. Oh, they make a dent in the world. They make a dent. The only dent was in my head from reading Electron documentation. There's no dent in the world. So then it was, what else? Where are we? Here, dent in the world. A lot of us came to the field because we simply love to build things. Why not act on your own ideas? But the best reply was this. Doing what you want. Like there's this illusion that if you have your own thing, you're going to do what you want. So let's say that I do what I want every day. One day I woke up to this email. Doing what you want. This is literally an email from a customer. Dude, this is in the subject. He didn't write content. So he just, in the subject, you were like, fuck you and your paid product. Is this doing what I want? So people forget about, like, this is like every startup ever. Everyone who went indie hacker or quit their job or whatever, you go to this high, that's DJ Khaled with the champagne, you're like, woohoo, whatever. And then for years, you just go on this slow burnout, which is inevitable, the not fun part. And to prove it to you, I made a second shitty chart. It's 90% not fun. It's 10%, you know, the tweets and the product content, whatever. You gotta understand that every job has this part, the jobby part. Every job. Like when you see, I don't know, Scarlett Johansson or any of these actors or whatever in a movie, you're like, oh, that's so freaking cool. But then they have to go on Hot Ones and eat spicy wings and burn their mouth to promote the fucking thing. Do you think they like eating wings and be like, yeah, this is... And then you get turned into a meme for years? They don't like doing that shit. Like every job has a job part. Like even the queen. Is it too early for that joke? Because she doesn't have a job anymore? Okay. Customers. I appreciate the people who raise their hand and they're actually giving me a couple of dollars per month for Sizzy, but you are a pain in the ass. Not you particularly, but customers are just a giant pain in the ass. So rule number one, you cannot hide your email. You cannot put it so deep in a page. You know, nowadays to find someone's email, you gotta go to help center, they're gonna fucking find it. And now when you have like Chat GPT on your site, like they're gonna ask it, like I see transcriptions from talking to the bot and people are like, human. They're like, give me the email. I send them an email. Like there's this motherfucker who wrote this email. Hey guys, you don't have an email. And I'm like, how did you find it? Did you just guess it? Like we literally got in this email. There's people who want to pay with invented currencies. Like we get emails like this. Hey, I'm a student and can I pay 50% in Doge, 50%? Like, no. This doesn't run on my, so never make a browser. I guess that's the conclusion of this talk. Do something else, don't do a browser. Because Linux and Chromebooks and don't buy a Chromebook also, whatever. Then we have discounts. I mean, this is our fault because we went all in on the discounts. Once you can see you make money online, dude, like you go all in on all the discounts. Like we had a Christmas discount, Hanukkah discount, day before Christmas discount, Santa and his wife anniversary discount, Kim Kardashian got divorced discount, like all the discounts, we had them, like basically every third day was a discount. But there are people who would email you, hey, I used the previous discount, but now I see you have a Halloween discount. Can I stack the two on top? And I'm like, why don't I give you money at this point? Yeah, you can stack the discounts. I'm going to give you $5 per month to use my freaking thing. But I want to thank my wife for her politeness. And she was doing the customer support and writing these long emails with apologies and sorry that we didn't reply. Because if it was up to me replying, this would be my email to every single person who's like, oh, I cannot find the button. It's right fucking there. The button is right there. So thankfully, I don't reply to customers. So then we have fuck marketing because it's cringe. Like I used to wear a Sizzy t-shirt during this. Like even when I'm talking about the product, like I want to tell you a story, but when it feels like I'm selling it, like can I go take a shower and come back because it's cringe. So fuck marketing is true, but to developers, the worst audience ever to sell something to. I'm sorry, I'm also a developer, but we are the worst. Even free stuff. Like GitHub Copilot was free in the beginning, right? And everyone loved it. They're like, oh, this is fucking amazing. It saves me so much time. Oh, it's paid now? Well, fuck it. I'll just write my own code. I'm going to kill Copilot, just use the blood to paint my own new code. I don't need GitHub Copilot. So it's all fun and games until something becomes paid. So my next product is definitely going to target everyone on earth, even snakes, lizards, snails, whatever, but not developers, because it's impossible. Imagine competing with a browser and trying to sell a browser to a developer. Next, we have hiring sucks, especially interviews. Doing what you want, right? That guy from the reply. When you have your own startup, you do what you want. Oh, I was dreaming of doing interviews with people with bad cameras and microphones somewhere in a cafe. That was actually my dream. So a couple of quotes from interviews. I start interview with a guy, and he's like on his balcony smoking. He's like, can I just finish my cigarette? Like, I get this new Gen Z, we can, you know, like we can be loose with our clothes and whatever, and we don't care how we appear at work. I get that, I support all of that. But everything is taken so fucking far that this guy was like, late for the meeting, let me just finish my cigarette. Amazing. Next I have call with this woman talking about this job and whatever, and I really want to listen to what she's saying, but all I hear in that cafe is like, but the player's gonna play. Because she didn't have proper mic, audio, anything, and I couldn't hear what she was saying. Next we have this person in the middle of the interview, I swear to God, like we start talking about this, she pivots, I don't know how she took it there, talking about COVID was a hoax. And she went on this long rant just convincing me that the vaccines in there. I'm like, how do you think you're getting this job? And the final, and my favorite interview I've done, is I start Zoom and I see just like a black room and you can barely see something. There's a figure, definitely, there's something moving. And you know, I'm like, hello, and from that side I go, hello. I'm like, I would like to do the interview, but are you kidnapped? Like, do we need to do, like, it's hilarious. So basically I hate doing that part, and I hate doing all sorts of things. Doing what you want. Writing a privacy policy pre-ChatGPT. Now you can be like, ask ChatGPT to write. We had to hire a person to write this. Meetings, dealing with people, find loopholes. Zico, one of the people who worked on Sizzy, a couple of days ago, I'm my biggest mess. He texts me, hey, I found a way to crack Sizzy. I'm like, mother. He's like, I have a crack. I'm going to release it to people. So I have to deal with that also. So classic advice from everyone. Why don't you just hire someone? Magically. Like you just, you know, money. The reason why you cannot hire someone instantly is money. Because it's like a chicken and the egg problem. Like, do you bootstrap or get VC funding, or like how do you get money to hire these people? It's like you don't know where to start. So this is the classic Shakespearean dilemma. He hates that I'm faking his quotes. But basically, when I talk to investors, they need you to focus, and I want to work on multiple things at once. And I'm afraid of losing control. So if you get VC funding, they're gonna orchestrate like what you need to work on. And I was afraid that when I open Sizzy, there's gonna be like KFC ad on one of the devices and a timer on the other ones. You use this for 10 seconds. Please pay us in crypto to continue using. So I didn't want to lose control over this. You might be saying, it's nice being your own boss, right? So we come to the final part of this, fuck being your own boss. This is so over-glorified. Like I was dreaming of one day like ditching my boss and working freelance. I did that. And I was like, yeah, but we still have a couple of meetings. I want to have an empty calendar. So I was dreaming of an empty calendar, and I always thought like the next step is going to set me free. Only if I can plan my own time, like I'm going to be free and do whatever I want. So the pros of having an empty calendar are planning your own time, making your own decisions, planning your own tasks. The cons of an empty calendar are planning your own time, making your own decisions, and plan. Like you don't know the existential dread that once you don't have anything to structure your time to be like, oh, I have a meeting or this and that, you are on your own. And people don't know how scary this can be sometimes. Like if you have a calendar full of meetings this week, you're like, oh, fuck you, guy. But really, sometimes it can be, like sometimes I would want to have like a job where someone gives me like a daily puzzle to solve. He's like, hey, here's this CSS thingy. And then I'd work on it the entire day, and it will, fulfill me as an engineer that I worked on this fun thing. Because that chart that I show with the fun part, like nothing has been fun. I feel like with building a startup on that line, my creativity and want to do things kind of died, because you're in meetings and you're doing things that you don't want to do, and you just cannot magically hire people to do those things. So we have all of these mugs. They're like, yeah, I'm 49% CEO, whatever. It's like way over glorified. Like I remember having a boss. We were, during lunch break, we were like making like, oh man, when we quit, we're going to call a band. It's going to be so epic. When we quit, we're going to do our own thing. People don't realize like there's more than these two halves, like working for someone or working for yourself. So when you work for someone, you don't think, okay, this person sucks. I might work for someone better at a better company. You just think, I can't wait to quit and work for myself. But there's a middle ground here. Like you can find a better company, someone that treats you better instead of just jumping into this and working for yourself. And the worst part is, you'll always be working for someone. Like I felt, only if I work for myself, but then I realized you work for the customers, which now you have thousands of them. So you have 1,000 bosses telling you, this doesn't work on Linux, this doesn't work on this doesn't work on that. So you have your employees, which kinda you're working for them because they need to be managed, they need to be given instructions and yada, yada, yada. So you'll always be actually working for someone. But everything seems so glamorous from the outside. You see these indie hackers near a pool, right? And you're like, oh, it'd be so amazing to work next to a pool. You don't see the kids splashing around their MacBook, and you don't see the glare of them trying to see something in dark mode while they're coding. You just see them at a pool. So hiring people is like this huge responsibility. Like you think that hiring someone will just fix the problem and you just leave them be. I've tried that strategy. It turns out people don't like it. People don't like to be left alone doing whatever. They like to be managed, micromanaged. They like for you to basically guide them on their way. And guess what? As an engineer, probably you're not skilled to do that. I'm not. I'm a bad manager. I'm a bad boss in a way because I cannot do that. I was meant for moving rectangles, CSS and HTML, not being managing people. So I realized as I was building this startup, like I'm just building more and more walls for myself, like creativity dies and I hire a person and I try something and I fire someone and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, like I didn't want, like I do the prison analogy, but prisons have more benefits. I'll let you read them. I'll sip on this water. Do I have 2 more minutes? I'll jump through these slides as fast as possible. So I'll jump through this story, doesn't matter, almost got hit by a bus thinking about work. So some days I just want to quit. It's basically on most days I want to quit this, but it feels unfair to the customers. It feels unfair to spending years on this, like the sunk cost fallacy. Now you're at this point, you're like, I might as well finish it. Whatever finish it means, maybe that line of MRR is going to finally crash or whatever finish means, it feels unfair to quit. And I always want to escape and build something else, but I realized I'm going to repeat this. I had a product I was excited about, started coding on it, I hit this, and now we're on the line with like, you got to answer to customers and issues and bugs and all sorts of shit. And yeah, this is deep, right? You thought it's going to be easy peasy. Oh, I'm going to be a startup founder. I'm going to buy a Tesla. It's going to be so nice. No, like it just doesn't work like that. Like all of these glamorous things that you see, you don't see all of these things. Like a lot of people congratulated on the car and whatever. No one saw that in that period, I was the most anxious, most depressed person. I literally hated everything I was working on. Like every day I felt so shitty. And people thought, oh, because he got to that level, probably there's happiness there. So there's no next level. Sometimes it's fine just being number 2. Actually, I would make a pun that being number 2 is the shit. Get it? Number 2. And it's fine if you're number 2 at some place instead of trying to quit your job and I'm going to be number 1, I'm going to work by myself. So finally, a Dalai Lama conclusion to this, that happiness is actually a mindset. I've been through all the levels, having a boss, having freelance, working that many hours, this many hours, working for yourself, having employees, not having employees. And throughout all of that, I just realized it's all in your head and it's just a mindset. It's not about who do you work for and how many meetings do you have. So someone asked me, final slide, knowing all of this, I told this entire story to someone and they're like, would you do it again? And I honestly don't have an answer. Maybe I will have one day. That QR code is going to give you a virus. So just follow me on Twitter. It's going to be easier, the Kitze. And I hope you talk to me during this conference. Enjoy the rest of the talks. And thank you for listening to my rant. That's it.